Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings on the 6th of October 2025. I don't know how many videos I've done over the last few years, but what I'm really feeling at the moment as I share these words is it kind of doesn't matter how often we do certain things. There will always be apprehension. There will always be excitement or nervousness as we stretch and expand beyond how we see ourselves. Now, the reason I share this, the reason I share anything, I guess, is to really recognize the potential that we all have within us. But today, I'm linking that to the full moon in Aries within the next few hours in the UK. I think it's at about 4:48 in the morning. I have written a blog about it and recorded that blog on Spotify. Aries is the identity. I'm not an astrologer. I don't know a great deal about astrology, but what I do know is myself. And that feels quite important as we lead into the energies this week, to recognize any confusion may come from forgetting that. When things come in that are new, that are different, or at least are perceived new and different, we can fall into the trap of believing we don't know who we are. This week is an opportunity to find the core beneath the many identities we have, but also the many identities we may be blocking, particularly in the spiritual community, or particularly in the parts of us that are trying to be, I hear the words holier than thou, but that are trying to be grown, that are trying to be healed, that are trying to be more mature, that are trying to be evolved, whatever word you want to use for it. The part of us that believes in order to move forward, we must release or let go of the idea of identity, ego, roles, whatever name you want to give that. This week is an opportunity to recognize it's not about niching ourselves. It's not about becoming one version of ourselves, but expanding into the many potentials that we hold. It's not about getting rid of the different views of who we are, or the places that we've been, or the experiences that we have gained, but bringing them all together into some form of completion. Thank you. Yes, Aries, as you go around the astrology wheel, the zodiac wheel, is the first, but also in beginnings there are endings. So recognizing that we get to see ourselves from or for the multifaceted human that we are. And that doesn't mean that we pick one over the other, but that we amalgamate that in a way that works for us. And that's where the ego is really important, because it's the ego that helps us to identify with ourselves on a human level. Just like it is our emotions, just like it is the experiences we've gone through, just like it is our doubts and our insecurities. Every time I tune in to do a video or a healing or whatever is being asked of me in that moment, every time I am guided to expand, to allow energy in for whatever it is I'm creating, there is a flutter, a quickening. Now, for those that have had children, you may remember that. When whatever you've conceived is starting to grow, you may remember that flutter and quickening in your body that we know as nervousness or anxiety, as our body's way of saying something is occurring here. It's not always about getting rid of that. It's not always about trying to be calm in that or eradicate that or even trying to understand that, but just having awareness this week is going to be key. Why is that so important? When we have an awareness of ourselves, when we come back to the core understanding of who we are, we can then interpret things from that perspective. We all know, or at least there's a lot of things out there that say, you know, how we see something creates it. And that can be in the woohoo world, but that can also be scientific in the realms of quantum physics. You know, the example of the black and the blue dress on social media, how everybody saw it differently based on the amount of light that their eyes could receive. And that's not a hierarchical thing. That's not a better or worse. Sometimes we're in positions where it can be really hard to see the positive. Sometimes we're in such beautiful places we don't want to see what the consequences of that could be also. You know, it depends on where we are. But acknowledging that how we see something affects it on a deeper level this week, from our core base foundation, acknowledging who we are, recognizing who we are in the creation of what is occurring around us, is really going to take that identity understanding to a next level. I shared something a couple of weeks ago. I use a lot of reference points to hierarchy and Maslow's basic needs, the triangle of basic needs, which basically suggests that provided you feel safe and fed and warmed, you can then open up to love. And if you open up to love, you can open up to community. And if you open up to community, you can open up to spiritual understanding and self-actualization, figuring out who you are, basically. I shared something the other day that suggested that Maslow had stayed with an indigenous tribe. And in his understanding, it was at the same time he was developing the theory of the triangle of basic needs, the hierarchy, for which he is known for. During that time, he understood that the more there was a community-based focus, the more the focus was also on the self and how well we understand ourselves, the greater these other aspects came into play. Unfortunately, that wasn't included in his research, and we have grown in a society where, understandably, our needs need to be met. But the most basic need of them all, the enlightenment, the truth of who we are, is something that is only achieved at the end of it all. The guidance this week is to recognize how it is constantly occurring, but beyond that, how it is the foundation of everything. If we do not know where we are, we don't know what makes us safe. If we do not know who we are, we don't know what we need. If we do not know who we are in our core, we do not and cannot interpret exactly what is going on around us from a more expanded view. And that is the potential. Recognizing not only the greater vision around us that is available, but our role within it, so that we can truly step into the identity of being a human, so that we can acknowledge the nervousness or the anticipation or whatever we're feeling as part of co-collaborating with the energies around us, and from there taking responsibility for it. Based on that, I'm going to look into the energies this week. There has been a lot that has occurred on a personal level, times where there's been compromise and negotiation, but also a standing up for what I know is right for me, and a recognition, humbly, at what I may have been fighting, but is right for parts of me that I've yet to integrate. Parts of me that I've actually avoided. An example, yesterday I went to a spiritual fete, and those that know me, it's not something that I do. I've never done it before. I'd like to say, because, you know, when I do readings or healings, they can be quite in depth, and I personally believe they need to be in a safer, more closed in, intimate environment. However, the truth of the matter is I've also had a very big chip on my shoulder around these fates, and their sacredness, I guess. I'm quite a stickler for ceremony and for healing being in a more intimate one-to-one energy. And this weekend I've been really guided to get over myself, to recognize where I am limiting my potential, but limiting those that I can meet, and limiting the view I have of the world. Now, that's not to say I haven't been to some fates as a client or someone that's purchasing goods and found them to be very cliquey and found them to be very commercial. I have, and that's initially where the spark or trauma or glimmer came from, the trigger came from. However, being aware that I've added to this by avoiding it this weekend, I bit the bullet, so to speak, and got out my own way and went to the fete. And it was beautiful. It was an honour to do the things that I was asked to do, to meet the people that I did, to experience parts of myself that in reality I was avoiding. It had nothing to do with the fate. It had nothing to do with the spiritual community. And I share that because I know that some of us get really lost for words sometimes when things happen around us. Some of us can get quite frustrated with our own area that we find ourselves in. But this week it's a great opportunity to look at where we're adding to that. I found the whole experience beautiful, and I could acknowledge with much gratitude not only where I had been blocking that, but where I'd been blocking myself. The fate brought forward, or fate itself I guess, brought forward deeper healings, where I was encouraged to hold the space that my room would have held in my own body for that person instead. And the readings were of a more medium-like nature, which is something I have been avoiding since childhood. So what am I getting at? If you can get out of your own way this week and allow fate to take its course, allow fate to guide you to perhaps some of the areas you may have been avoiding. I'm not suggesting you put yourself in any situations that are unsafe, but any of the areas you may have been avoiding for whatever reason, particularly things that have come up in the past, or the ways that you have seen yourself or others or the world around you, you may just get a different perspective, not only of the circumstances, but of yourself and your own potential within it. One of the things that's really coming through on another level, and this isn't going to be anything that you don't know, but one of the things that's coming through on a really deep embodied level is the impact of allowing ourselves to see, truly see, and how that creates the perspective that others see and that we have also. The guidance that came through today with the daily dose was something along the lines of watching life and becoming therefore part of it, really opening our eyes, or our eye, okay, really opening our identity to what is available. We haven't seen anything yet, particularly as we go into next year. Okay, so energies this week and how to best navigate them. Yes, I did look at the cards before I started, and two cards came out, and that was the King of Pentacles and the Hanged Man. So it's one thing to see, but also grounding in our vision, or looking at where we have become bloody stubborn in our vision, because the Aries moon, yes, is on the Libra axis, so there is a with the Libra sun, there is a invitation there to balance things out, but looking at where we may have become, like the ram, a bit too stubborn with how we think things should be. And we can give ourselves some wonderful reasons or excuses for that, like I did with the fates. But sometimes really experiencing something, going through it and seeing what it's all about, feeling what it's all about, embodying what it's all about, will just take us beyond what we think we know to actually what's inside of us that we may have been negotiating with. Okay, so energies this week. Yeah, embodiment is the only way to ground the vision, right? So recognizing our actions are what brings forth what we're seeing. Okay, energies. There is going to be a need for integration. Some of the stuff that was coming through this week, you know, when I was trying, yeah, the Queen of Cups, when I was trying to make sense of it, and we have the moon underneath, when I was trying to make sense of it in the old ways that I would have made sense with it, particularly in readings, it just wasn't happening because the energy has changed. I have changed, things have shifted. So allow yourself time for integration with that. It's going to be really key. Don't fill the gaps with the usual stuff, because it's not the same. It's not the same. You're not the same. Things have changed, and things will change more so over this full moon. Look back 6 months ago with the last Aries and Libra movement. Look back 6 months ago and see what seeds that you actually put in. This is known as the harvest moon, or the bloody moon, that bloody moon. But really looking at things that you may have planted, things that have taken your energy, things that have helped you to grow. And start to restore that balance for yourself as well. Bring that harmony. You know, one of the most beautiful things with the healings and with the readings this weekend or wherever they're done, once we're in that state of equilibrium, whether that's us providing the service or those receiving it, once we're in that state of equilibrium, everything kind of sorts itself out anyway. So whatever you can this week, trying to find a way to come back to that balance within you. Okay. And the only way to do that is to recognize when you're not, when you're feeling that anxiety or that excitement or that quickening, being aware of what is going on in your body, what you're creating, what you're agreeing to, what you're conceiving with, taking responsibility for that. Energies this week and how to best navigate them. Okay, yeah, well, I'm going to pull it there because it felt like I could shuffle the cards forever. Like, I didn't like that answer. I keep going until I get an answer that I want. And what that's doing is on the collective, remembering that this reading is for the collective. If anything stands out to you on an individual level, great. But I don't know you better than you know yourself. This is a collective reading. On the collective, what's happening is an apathy. There is a boredom here of nothing changing, of no matter what you do, not getting past the point of where you're at. But emotionally, there's also security there. Emotionally, there's also stability there. So the number 4 can be a great foundation to build upon. You have the 3 of Cups, the things that have already been delivered, a great foundation to build upon. But it isn't supposed to be enough to not bring in something different. We're going from the 3 to the 4. So whilst we have that great birth of our potential, the next stage comes with what are we going to do with that, because that's how we learn, that's how we take things to the next level. It's one thing to see, it's another thing to do. And emotionally, if we don't do anything with that, then we may get a bit apathetic. We may feel as if nothing's changing, and no matter what happens, things don't seem to shift. Well, maybe, just maybe, part of that shift is your own role within it. Okay. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Interesting, we have no major arcanas this week, so no huge moments of fate this week, and that could actually be the apathy that many feel. You know, this week is not a week where we allow or we wait for decisions to be made outside of us, because it's about recognizing our own identity in that as the creators that we are. And that's going to bring forth, particularly on the Monday, some insecurities, some doubts, some not knowing how to move forward with that in the Seven of Cups. And what happens here in the Seven of the Cups, he's trying to choose between either or. What do they all have in common? What do all of these decisions, choices, ways that we feel all have in common? Well, here it's a game of snakes and ladders. Sometimes we go up, sometimes we come down. It's the emotional maturity that runs through it. It's the psyche and our vision that runs through it. Does this help us want to move forward? Are we ready for that? What do we need? 7 is endurance. So recognizing whilst there is change there, that change comes from how well we can embody it. Now, I'm not saying that with any judgment. What I'm saying is there's no point pushing before you're ready. You will feel, or we will feel collectively, a build-up of energy behind, almost like contractions behind what we're trying to deliver. However, it may be a moment to pause and to reflect, to go over what you've already learned, so that we don't take forward anything that will be bogging us down, anything that will be wonderfully distracting, anything that will take us away from the decisions that actually we know we want to make. When it comes to the mediumship type readings, the truth of the matter is that it's always been there, and it's always been woven in how I read anyway. It was for me to see that. Now, on the Monday, the decisions that we are being faced with have always been there. It's more about opening ourselves emotionally to them. Because on the Tuesday, we then have the Ace of Pentacles. On the Tuesday, we then have that first step forward. Now, in this card, it's almost been plucked from the ground. It's almost like a seed that has been pulled up. With that, it can feel quite unrooted. It can feel different. It can feel although it's something that we know, knowing how to take that forward or what to do with that can feel quite challenging, particularly if we see ourselves as changed or different from how we were. Coming back to that core knowing, you hold the seeds to all of your potential. What you choose to do with that, what we choose to do on a collective level with that, is entirely up to us. And that can be what we don't want to see on the Wednesday in the Two of Swords. It can be incredibly empowering to know that we have options if we're in a strong enough place to make them, if we're in a grounded enough place to decide. However, if we've become accustomed to life particularly battling us down or making choices for us, when it comes to our turn, that may be a muscle that we need to remember how to use. And the key to that is acknowledging, no matter what's happened throughout life, particularly those things where it feels like we've had no control, we always have, and that's been in our reactions. That's the responsibility and the invitation this week, to acknowledge. Not everyone is going to want to see that, and that's okay. It's not up to what anyone else sees, but what you're prepared to envision within you, particularly on the Wednesday. Coming back to the heart space on the Thursday with the Ace of Cups, we have a beautiful Ace of Pentacles, 2 days later an Ace of Cups. So if we can come back to ourselves, to our physical body, coming back to our heart space, really taking care of ourselves and nurturing ourselves. One of the things with the full moon this week, but also as we go into 2026, is acknowledging again that we are at the center of that change. We are the deciding factor between the snakes and ladder game. We are the part that picks whether or not we go up, whether or not we grow and expand, or whether or not we shrink in. And that's a normal reaction based on how we feel physically. So the more we can take care of ourselves physically, the more we can, quote unquote, fill our own cup, or recognize that the cup is a continually flowing energy, and open ourselves and expand ourselves, but give ourselves what we need in order to do that, then the more balanced this week is going to be. On the Friday, that leads us then on to the 9 of Cups. Okay, so we're not quite on the 10. On the Thursday, we can feel that inkling. We can come back to our heart and feel quite open to what it is we're trying to achieve, quite open to what it is we want to receive. But on the Friday, we're not quite there yet. And the reason we're not quite at the 10 is because we need to be open to ourselves first. We need to find that treasure from within ourselves first. And that may take some emotional deep diving to what is going on. So really being with ourselves on the Thursday and the Friday to allow things to unravel and to unfold. On the Saturday, we're going to get that we've been not trying to avoid, but that has been almost an undercurrent for some time for many, coming to the surface in the 5 of Cups. That emotional feeling of the apathy moving then onto the grief. So we have that at the beginning of the week, or throughout the week even, a feeling of boredom. But when we really tap into that boredom and come back home to ourselves and what we're longing for now, and our role in that, we start to feel the grief of all the things that perhaps we haven't done, or all the things we thought we were. That's why we hold on to identities. It's why we separate them, because we want to have some substance in who we are. And when that can be pulled out from under us, when life comes along and changes our perspective of that, what then? That can really bring forward deep transformation, but with that deep grief as well. So on the Saturday, having time with that, but on the Sunday, working with it also. On the Sunday, we have the 3 of Pentacles, creating with that, recognizing where we may have been creating with grief, where we may have been creating particularly with those that have passed on. I found that this weekend, many people, you know, beautifully connected to their loved ones that had passed on, but myself as well, and recognizing with great humility where I have been creating all along with those that have passed on, or created all along with being creative all along with grief and our emotions. One of the biggest things with loss is to get too caught up in the separation, whether that's our dreams, our loved ones, who we once were, being really divided really separate from that causes a great amount of pain. Come the weekend, we're going to see actually where that separation is an illusion. Whether you want to call that death is an illusion, whether you want to call that endings are an illusion, whether you want to call that change is an illusion. Why would that be important as we go into 2026? Do we want change to be an illusion? It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just a very small part of the process. Change is the beginning and the end. You know, there isn't that separation, and that separation is just for us to understand. Come the weekend, there's an opportunity of completion and wholeness by bringing it all together. So overall, I was very tempted to look to one side then, and that's the invitation as well this week, to really look at where we're tempted to look for more. Because when we're feeling as if we want more, if that's coming from a place of not enough, that's all we're going to get more of. Coming back into the body, grounding in, what is it? Get clear what it is you actually need more of. Acknowledge where you feel you're lacking. So with me, that would have been more clarity, because I felt in that split second that it was lacking. But I hadn't finished the reading. Finish the process. Let things integrate before seeking more. Not that having more is a good or bad or positive or negative thing. The more you can get clear on what that is, the easier it's going to be. The more expansive your understanding of your creative ability will become. That's where you get the clarity. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. We do have those 4 cups. We have 4 separate cups here, but we had the 4 of cups overall. So we have the 7 of cups, the Ace of cups, the 9 of cups, and the 5 of cups. Excuse me. Recognizing where our emotions can be our foundation, but they can also imprison us. We can be very, very comfortable with what we feel, and we can be very passive in our emotions also. This week it's an opportunity to expand them. There's no fire signs in this reading this week so far. So we have that Aries full moon, which is a fire sign anyway, and we have Chiron, I think, as well, retrograding, I think, don't quote me on that, in Aries at the same time. So we have this deep healing that is occurring. It may feel as if we're tired. It may feel as if we need to rest. It may feel as if we have no spark to continue, or it may be the other way and we've burnt ourselves out completely. Looking at the process that we continue to create with this week is going to be what is being healed. One of the things with the spiritual fates for me going to is I've always felt like a little bit of a loner in that kind of community, and the truth be known, I felt quite comfortable with that, and many times created a narrative that kind of keeps me separate from that community, and it's worked for me. But underneath it all, there's a loneliness that needed to be healed, and it wasn't about connecting to people in the spiritual community, but connecting to that spirituality within me. I knew the moment I did that, how I offered things would start to expand, and on a subconscious level, for whatever reason, I wasn't ready until this weekend. Trusting the process, trusting that you need to be ready, but also being aware of what is occurring for you, where you are perhaps keeping yourself small emotionally in narratives that you've outgrown, stories that you've outgrown. Particularly when it comes to I don't know what I want. Or I don't know, where indecisiveness. Indecisiveness is great because it can help us journey down different avenues and discover bits about ourselves. But the truth of the matter is we were always going to do that anyway, and that was part of the decisions. Even if we feel like we haven't known what we were doing, acknowledging the path that we've walked and our place within it, so that we can come back and complete many, many cycles. And it's the 7 for generations to come as well, particularly as we go into the thinning of the veil. We're going to really, really feel those ancestors. And yeah, thank you. When we don't finish or complete or acknowledge or own up and embody our gifts, we don't embody the gifts of our ancestors that have been handed down to us either. I really feel that one. Yes, opening our heart to that, opening our heart to them. And I can really feel that one as well. And I can feel the resistance. I get it. I can feel the resistance, particularly with human stuff. I can feel the resistance, but curiously, softly, gently, allowing things to expand a little bit here this week is going to be how we move forward emotionally. We then have one sword card, and it's the Two of Swords. And in the face of adversity, in the face of perceiving that we don't know what it is we want, come within, have peace. One of the other pieces of guidance that I received this morning from a huge purple dragon, as you do, one of the pieces of guidance that I received was not until I can see with my eyes closed will I know what's coming next. So not until we intuitively feel our way forward this week will we be able to create something different or really get the clarity that we're searching for. So it's not about finding peace as such in the way that we believe it to be, you know, being calm, not feeling anything, getting rid of the ego, moving beyond things, rising above. It's not about that. It's about bringing the moments that we may not be able to do that into a sense of that higher self energy. Bring the storm into the calm that you can find from within you. Being mindful of any bypassing with that. Again, it's not about switching it off. It's about finding that inner stillness within it. Remember, you are the eye of the storm, just like we all are. And acknowledging that, owning that, being present in that, grounded in that, because many feel like they're not grounded in that. Not only from this reading this week, but from what I've seen, many feel or have forgotten how grounded they are. The reason that we end up going through so many things, or one of the reasons we go through so many things, one of the things we can take from what we go through, I'm not saying we have to go through it in order to gain it. I'm not getting caught into that trap. I don't believe in unnecessary suffering, but many have gone through things and remembered who they are, but not embodied that, and are continuing to go through that because they feel ungrounded and unrooted in the processes that they've been part of. This week, take some steps, no matter how small, to realize how far you have come. That's going to bring some balance to the situation, but also to yourself. And then from there, we have the Two Pentacle cards, the Ace of Pentacles and the Three of Pentacles. Looking at what we want to create, really getting honest with that, and then looking at how we are doing so, with who and where we're not. I've always wanted to create a world where spirituality is normal, because for me, spirituality is creativity. For me, spirituality is the soul. It's not a religion in the sense of a dogma. It's a way of life, and it's different and beautiful for us all. But for me personally, part of my thing has been it's an everyday occurrence that we all have, that we're all connected to, that we all have the potential for. And yet I avoided spiritual fates for a very, very, very long time. Really looking at where you may not be in alignment with a vision that has been trying to come through you, where you may have been blocking that from your own human stuff. Now, that's not to say that it's a negative thing. You can laugh about it, you can learn from it, but you need to acknowledge it. Otherwise, we're going to have that apathetic energy individually and collectively that nothing is changing, because we haven't. Okay. Oh dear. One card. I am going to see what that one was now. Oh, it's the Two of Cups. Beautiful. So Two of Cups underneath it. That glorious union with our psyche, with the collective, with our emotions, with each other, can only really come when we connect to all aspects of ourselves. You know, if we're going to separate ourselves into this is what I do, this is what I don't do, this is the different version of me. If we're going to, thank you, restrict our own flow, we're not going to unite with other parts that could help us really reconnect on a whole deeper level with ourselves, with each other, and with the world. So it's going to take some integration. I can feel myself not struggling, but almost remembering, the more I practice, almost remembering, the more I connect to this energy, the wisdom that it holds. But it is new, familiar, old, and it needs reintegrating and restructuring, and I can feel that. But the way to do that is to do it, to show up, to do it in your raw, unperfected, beautiful self. Find your way by doing it, by becoming it. Yes, the King of Wands and the Ace of Cups. Find your light. We actually have a fire card now underneath it all, and it is the King of Wands. Be of service to yourself, to each other, in your regal sovereign self. One of the things with the blog this week was it was very much, the theme tune was Purple Rain. There's huge transformation going on with our sovereignty and how we perceive that. It has to come from the heart. It has to come from a place of service and love. That has to include you within it also. I'm going to leave it there. Take care, and I shall see you next week.